Welcome back to Conversations Different, the podcast from the Santa Fe New Mexican. This week, we are thrilled to be talking to best-selling author Anne Hillerman, whose latest mystery, Lost Birds, will be out this April. Welcome, Anne. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
First, a little background. Anne, of course, is the daughter of Tony Hillerman, a former editor of the Santa Fe New Mexican, by the way. He went on to create an enduring mystery series starring two Navajo detectives, Joe Leaphorn and Jim Chee, over 18 books and 36 years. Anne Hillerman has continued the series, starting with Spider-Woman's Daughter, and she has done a fabulous job. What was it like, Anne, deciding to take over this world?
Oh, it was scary. I have to say, I had never taken a class in how to write fiction. I had never written a novel. But after my dad died, I realized that I was missing my dad, of course, but that also I would be missing those characters. And it just seemed a shame for the series to die with him. And I thought I had worked for the New Mexican, and then I worked for another paper, and I had done a lot of magazine writing. So writing wasn't new to me. And I'd done some nonfiction books. So I kind of understood what it was like to meet deadlines, what it was like to have longer projects, which I'd had with my nonfiction books. But I had never tried fiction, so it was scary. But it was wonderful, too. It was really just a great challenge.
One of the things I love about those books and your books as you've continued it is that the characters are our friends and almost our family. And when I was in graduate school back east, I remember meeting somebody and they were like, "You're from New Mexico." And they loved the books, and they had one dog named Chee and another one named Leaphorn. And asked me all these questions as if I had participated somehow just by being in the state. But it was like people had an ownership. And I can only imagine not a burden, but what a responsibility that must have been.
That's exactly right. And I think that was why it took me about 3 years to write that first novel. I think when a lot of people are writing their first novels, they have a little more assurance that there won't be a lot of criticism. You know, people in their high school would read it, maybe people they went to college with, people in their church, people on their block, maybe book clubs. But my dad was a New York Times bestseller. So I thought when my name comes out on these Jim Chee, Joe Leaphorn, Bernadette Manuelito stories, people are going to think, who is this person taking over Tony Hillerman's realm, and how come the name is Anne? And I figured they would maybe give me 10 pages. And if they didn't like it, not only would they not read it, but then they would tell all of their friends, "Don't read this. This new Hillerman book just stinks." So there was a little more pressure, shall we say,
yes,
I think, on me writing my first novel than there would be on other people writing a first novel. And of course, the other side of that is that most people, there are really wonderful books that hardly get any attention. And I knew, because again, the other side of that coin, because
that
of the
you were
name,
going to get the attention.
Exactly. I knew I would. So that was kind of like a good thing and a bad thing. It's like, yay, maybe people actually buy this book, and then maybe people will buy this book and not like it, and then I will never be able to write another book again in my whole life. So, yeah, it was a real interesting position to be in.
What I loved is reading that you sent it off to the agent, but before you did that, your mom read it. And what did she tell you?
Oh, that was such a great story. So I'd asked her before I started writing it if it would be okay with her, because she was sort of the godmother of Jim Chee and Joe Leaphorn. She was my dad's first editor, best editor. And she said, "Sure, why don't you try it? I think that might be a good project for you." So I sent it to her right before Thanksgiving. And I remember thinking, oh, finally, I've got this out of my hair. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and then maybe toward the end of January, I might hear from her, because it was a pretty big manuscript. So she called me like 3 or 4 days after I had given it to her. And I thought, oh, no, some of it didn't get printed out right. There's some problem with the manuscript. But no, she'd already read it.
Nice.
And I said, "So what did you think?" And she says, "Oh, I think your dad would be proud of you." And that was, it doesn't matter how old you are. Those are just, magic words. So, and then she did have a few really good criticisms for me, very gently said. And so I took her criticisms to heart and did some rewrite. And then I sent it to my dad's editor, who luckily I had met, and who, before I decided to take on the series, I had asked her if perhaps there would be some copyright issues or some holes I might fall into that I wanted to avoid. And she said, no, go right ahead. It's fine. And then she said, when you're done with it, I'd be glad to take a look at it. And interestingly, you would think that would be encouragement, but it also was kind of like having all those fans out there waiting for a book. It was also like a big speed bump on the way, thinking, oh, this has to be very well done because this New York editor is going to look at it. So I ran into her at a conference, and we're talking about everything else. And then finally she says to me, so how is the book coming? I say, well, fine, but I'm having some trouble with the plot. She said, oh, it doesn't have to be perfect for me to look at it. And somehow hearing those words, it doesn't have to be perfect, just kind of liberated me to finish it. So anyway, that's a long answer to your sweet question about my mom.
That's a wonderful question. And she liked it, obviously, because you got a 2-book contract and off you went.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It was really wonderful.
I know that book is very special to me, Spider-Woman, because I was reading that with my mother as she got sick. And she didn't get to finish it. So I was it always makes me a little sad, but she loved those books. And she thought that having Bernadette be a more preeminent character was a great improvement. She enjoyed that very much.
Well, Bernadette, the character of Bernadette Manuelito was really what gave me the gumption to continue the series. I loved that character, and I thought my dad never really brought her up to her full potential. And so in his second to the last book, Skeleton Man, I don't know if you remember that book, but it's the one that's set at the Grand Canyon, and Bernie and Jim Chee and Cowboy Dashi are hiking down the trail, and there's the bad guys are at the bottom, and they're going to be, solving the crime. And so the two guys say to Bernie, well, you just stay here on the trail and don't let anybody else come down and get in the way of our crime solving. But Bernie does not stay there. Bernie goes down the trail. Bernie finds the woman who's been kidnapped. Bernie finds the stolen diamonds. Bernie finds the bad guys, arrests them. But then, because my dad loved those male characters, there's a flood in the Grand Canyon. There's chaos everywhere. Jim Chee shows up as if by magic, finds the bad guys again, finds the diamonds, finds the woman who's been kidnapped, and rescues Bernie. And after I read that, I said to Dad, I think readers would really love to see Bernie Manuelito take the next step and be on the same level as Jim Chee and Joe Leaphorn. She's smart, she's strong. I mean, I didn't say this to Dad. I thought he hadn't really used her to her full potential. And I was lucky that he did not take my advice.
That's right.
His other books, Bernie stays in the level. Well, she and Jim Chee get married, but that's about the only change in his books that happens for Bernie. So then when I took over the series, she was there kind of waiting to rise to the top and to become a lead character.
And she certainly has. And on that, we'll take a quick break and be back with Anne Hillerman talking about the mystery stories that everyone loves.
Thanks, Inez. This is Patrick Dorsey, publisher of the Santa Fe New Mexican. We hope you're enjoying this episode of Conversations Different with Inez Russell Gomez. Great local content is only possible with a talented staff dedicated to bringing you the best local content possible. For that staff to do its work, we need your support by subscribing to the Santa Fe New Mexican. If you're already a subscriber, thank you. And if not, there's never been a better time to subscribe. In addition to our home-delivered newspaper that comes with full digital access, we also provide digital-only subscriptions for SantaFeNewMexican.com. We'll also be releasing more online-only audio and video programming moving forward. The Santa Fe New Mexican has been here for nearly 175 years, and we want to continue being your source for local news and information. Visit us at SantaFeNewMexican.com/subscribe or call us at 505-986-3010. Thank you.
It's a new day in New Mexico, and the doors to boundless opportunity are open as tens of thousands of New Mexicans reach higher to pursue a dream, broaden their horizons, and retrain for a better job. With the New Mexico Lottery and Opportunity Scholarships, You could build yourself a better future anywhere in the state. You put in the hard work, we'll help with the costs. For eligibility details, visit reachhighernm.com.
We are back with Conversations Different, talking to best-selling author Anne Hillerman. One of the things I had read is how you set your books, is that you kind of think about what you want to address. You pick a topic almost, and then you will build your plot and your characters and everything around it. And so the next book that's coming out at the end of April is Lost Birds. And it's going to be, I think, a well-read and a kind of debated one because it's about Indigenous children being adopted by non-natives.
That's right. That's right. When I was working on that book, the Indian Child Welfare Act had been appealed by several states. And it's, for people who aren't familiar with it, this was the act which said tribal entities have a right to raise their own children. And that it's wrong for states to put a child up for adoption by a non-native family, the best thing is for the child to be raised in that community so the child stays in touch with his or her culture. So because it was on my mind because this was in the courts, and also because I'm the eldest of 6 kids and all 5 of my siblings were adopted. And that was in the era many years ago of closed adoptions. My mom and dad didn't know really what their ethnicity was. A couple of my siblings looked like they might have had some native blood in them, but there were no records. No one knew. Anyway, this topic really resonated with me. So that is one of the strong themes in Lost Birds. And in fact, the theme Lost Birds actually was created many years ago, right after the Battle of Little Bighorn, when there was a young native girl who was kidnapped, basically, by one of the soldiers who'd been in the battle. And so then her quest to find her own family was where that name, Lost Bird, came from. That, in fact, was the English translation of her native name.
Oh, I love that. You bring so much history and knowledge of the Southwest, because I think a lot of people know that, Indigenous children were adopted out of their tribes, but I don't think they realize, especially with the Navajo Nation, at what great numbers happened in the 40s and the 50s.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I have a background in journalism too, and I think part of that really kind of gave me an affection for research. And one of my challenges when I switched from fiction to nonfiction was how to kind of rein in the research and how to remember, people aren't reading this to learn all of the details of the Indian Child Welfare Act. What they really want to know is, will Jim Chee and Joe Leaphorn and Bernadette Manuelito solve the crime? Will the people who are being threatened, will their lives be okay, and so it's been a challenge for me to sort of figure out how to integrate just enough of the research to have it be an integral part of the story, but not have it be those pages that people skip because they want to get to the good parts.
Yeah, that's very smart of you. I think, though, when you have that knowledge and that research, you write with authority in a way that you won't, even if you don't see it on the page as a word. So what you're doing is you're writing your story with a lot of authority.
Yeah, that's what I try to do. Thank you. Yeah.
I can't wait to read this one. This will be good.
Well, the other thing, can I say something?
Yes.
The other thing I love about this book is that it's a Joe Leaphorn book again. In several of my books, Joe has been kind of peripheral. He's been sort of an advisor to Bernie and Jim Chee, but not really in the action. But in this book, Jim Chee is sort of sidelined. Bernie has a big part, but Joe Leaphorn is one of the main crime solvers. Joe and his buddy Captain Largo, they team up. These two, retired, slightly overweight, a little bit out of shape, old cops team up to really do very good, very thrilling and courageous deeds. I don't want to say more because it's a mystery, but
no,
I loved writing about them in that way.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. And as someone who is getting older and slightly I always like to see that, we keep going. Now you're going to be out promoting the book and you're going to be at Collected Works.
That's
kind
right.
of kicking it off.
That's right. My first New Mexico book signing is at Collected Works on April 21st, and it's a benefit for a group that supports rural libraries. So
we have many of those in New Mexico.
We do, and they're not only libraries, but a lot of them are community centers.
Yes.
A lot of them are really integral to the little towns where they are. So I was delighted to be able to do this, and I hope people will come out and listen to me. I'll talk about the book and maybe read some passages from it, and then take questions that people have.
Oh, that's going to be wonderful. I know as a frequenter of the Dave Cargo Memorial Library in Mora, I know how much, we depended on donations and people helping, because there wasn't a really regular subsidy for those kinds of libraries.
Right. I think they serve so many roles. And I would not have become a writer without libraries, and my father wouldn't have either. So for both of us, libraries are really important.
Yeah. And I know when you get on the waiting list, though, for the book, sometimes you're like 10, especially like a good bestseller and a good murder mystery, you can be like 10 or 15. But, eventually the book will get there if people read fast.
Yeah, that's right. And I love to do talks at libraries, too. I'm going to be doing a talk at the Placitas Library. I'm not sure exactly when, but that's a wonderful library, too. It's a community library. I think they might get a little money from the county, but mostly it's supported by donations.
Nice. Well, one of the things I read about you is that, you're a New York Times bestselling author. It's not like you just wrote a book and sold it to your, 5 friends, but you go where people like to hear you in libraries. That's a really wonderful thing.
Well, and I just think there's so many wonderful nonprofits that are doing good work, and I figure I've just been so blessed to be able to do what I love, and very few writers are able to make a living writing. I mean, you know that yourself, Inez. So it's just kind of a double heap of blessings. So I figure however I can help people who are working to make the world better, that it's really important. It's important to me. It's really more important than seeing my name on the New York Times list. Although that's nice.
No, I was, as we were talking before we started, I think the idea that I have the latest Anne Hillerman, like your name is the book, is pretty awesome. That just is something every writer must secretly say, oh, I wish that would happen to me.
Well, what really makes you happy is that there's a title and then your name. And when you see that your name and the title are in the same type size, you think, yeah, okay.
That's not bad.
Not bad at all.
I like that. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with another segment and talk about the movie version of the Tony Hillerman, Anne Hillerman novels. This is Conversations Different.
My name is Maria Jose Rodriguez Cadiz, and I am the Executive Director with Solace Sexual Assault Services. Our mission is to prevent sexual violence and empower survivors of sexual violence through restoring dignity, strength, and resiliency. For almost 51 years, Solace has reduced the impact of sexual violence. We do it by focusing on human rights, social justice, hope, and dignity. We believe survivors are experts in their own experiences and acknowledge that empowering them is crucial to their healing. Our advocacy, forensic interviewing, and therapy services are centered to their needs. Our sexual violence prevention programs in schools and community is just as important. Please check our website at findsolace.org. And if in need, you can call our 24/7 hotline, which is 800-721-7273. Your support is crucial to the lives of survivors. Thank you. Gracias.
We are back again with Conversations Different, and Anne Hillerman, best-selling author. And one of the exciting, I think it's exciting anyway, because we all love TV shows, items in your life in the last few years is Dark Winds became a television show, and it has been quite a success.
That's right. I was really surprised. I mean, not that it was a success, but that Robert Redford and George R.R. Martin decided to revive these stories. As you may remember, Robert Redford made 3 movies based on my dad's books. They were done with the Boston affiliate of PBS, and it was part of the PBS's American Mystery Series. I think Dad's Stories might have even launched that series. Anyway, many years go by, decades actually, and then Robert Redford and George R.R. Martin decide that they would like to revisit these books. And One thing that really delighted me in Dad's books, as I said before, Bernie Manuelito was kind of a minor character. But in the Dark Wind series, Bernie is front and center. Bernie is a very strong, competent Navajo police officer. And in the first season, Bernie is even Jim Chee's boss.
That's awesome.
Yes. I was really tickled with that. And they've made some changes. I mean, in Dad and my books, Jim Chee is the detective who has more of a spiritual basis, and Joe Leaphorn is more acculturated, a little more cynical, more kind of rough and tumble, I guess you would say. But in the Dark Wind series, Joe Leaphorn has the more spiritual qualities, and Jim Chee is the guy who's been raised off the reservation, and now he's coming back. And I don't want to give away too much about the series for people who haven't seen it, but in some of the early episodes, he's even working with the FBI, which I think my dad would not have liked that change. But it works. It really works for the TV series.
I totally agree, because that actually stopped me when I started watching it, because the very first series, Jim Chee's late to work and he doesn't stop to help somebody. And I was like, no, Jim Chee would never not stop to help somebody. And it took me a while. I had to stop and say, okay, this is a new thing. Take it for what it is and enjoy it. And I did. But and then I was like, but no, he's the traditionalist. He was learning, the ceremonies from, was it his uncle or his grandfather?
His uncle.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm not sure why TV shows make the changes they do, but they do. And, and you enjoy it for what it is. And it's so well cast and well written, I think.
I agree. The cast is all natives, and a lot of the writers are natives, including Navajos. So, I think that authenticity really shows.
Yeah. I did read the Navajo Twitter complaining that the Navajo they were hearing didn't sound like the Navajo they heard at home. But I think that instead of getting upset about that, the producers, and you're one of the producers, but like the ones working on the actual show or the TV directors, maybe worked on that a little bit.
That's right. They hired a cultural consultant, a man named George Joe, who has been working with them. And they also hired some language coaches. And Navajo is a terrifically difficult language to speak. And I think, of course, I would be critical if it were my language and it were misspoken. But on the other hand, I think you have to give them credit for at least giving it a good shot. And so, I think it adds authenticity to the show.
I do too, because anyone who lives on the edge of the reservation like we do here in New Mexico and goes, anywhere, if you go to Shiprock or Waterflow or any of those little towns, you're going to hear Navajo, you're going to hear English, you might hear a little Spanish. It's definitely a real multicultural, multilingual area, so you have to have that.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah. What I think is it's really thrilling. Reading the books is thrilling, and then when you're watching it, that can really get you all excited.
Oh, yeah. For me, there was just such a thrill in seeing my characters as real people. It's like, whoa, my goodness. And they did a really good job in the casting, I think. Zahn McClernand, who plays the Joe Leaphorn, does a fine, fine job. Jessica Madden as Bernadette Manuelito. She's taller and more attractive than the Bernie I imagine in my books. Not that my Bernie isn't pretty, but she's not a model like Jessica Madden is.
Right.
And then Kiowa Gordon, who plays Jim Chee, also, he's got kind of that young guy attitude that I think works really well in that role.
No, because Jim was always, he was ready to go out and, tame dragons kind of thing. So I think that does work.
Yeah, that's right. That might have to do with George R.R. Martin's role in it.
That's right. Because he definitely knows about dragons.
Yeah, no dragons in Dark Winds.
No, not yet anyway. And it's nominated for an Edgar Award.
That's right. I'm so excited. May 1st, the awards will be announced. The script from the last season of Dark Winds, 3 scripts from a show called Poker Face that I had never seen, but I have to say it's a really good show. And then one of the Will Trent scripts.
Okay.
So those are the 5 nominees. So everybody keep your fingers crossed for Dark Winds.
I will. Maybe the poker ones will, cancel each other out.
Maybe. I don't know.
Who knows?
Anyway, I'm just happy. I think just being nominated, if you think of how many shows there are on television, for Dark Winds to rise to the top, I think it's a remarkable achievement. So
yeah, I agree.
I'm really delighted.
And I think it just must be thrilling considering your dad's connection with the Navajo Nation, all the cultural research you've done in your life, all the people, your friends, that there's just kind of an Indigenous storytelling renaissance right now. And Dark Winds is part of that because of who's in the cast and the story and where it's set.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think all of those wonderful writers who've gone to the IAIA and now their books are getting published, it really is such a different world than certainly from when Dad started the series back in the 1970s. And even from when I wrote Spider-Woman's Daughter about 12 years ago. Then there weren't very many Indigenous writers, and a lot of them were, I'm sure there were writers, but they weren't getting national recognition,
right.
Except maybe some poets. And now the world has changed in such a wonderful way. And I think the IAIA deserves a lot of credit for what they've done supporting Indigenous people who want to be writers. Their program is really, really fabulous.
Yeah, I went to a reading over Christmas for some people that are in the master's program, and it was the works in progress, and I was just like, I can't wait till they finish.
Yeah.
It was exciting stuff. So you're going to be promoting your book, and obviously for writers, there's always the next book.
Yep.
Do you start on that right away, or do you wait till you're done, or...
Well, I guess I'm always thinking about it, but I've started on the next one. It's due the middle of June, so I need to kind of hustle it up here.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, I know it's coming. It's breathing down my neck.
Yes.
But one of the storylines of this has to do with the Indigenous people who were basically kidnapped from the Navajo Nation, but also from Indian country all around, and taken to Phoenix and put in these fake rehab centers. Where they
I read about that.
Yeah, they didn't get any treatment for drug or alcohol abuse. Basically, their identities were stolen so the people running these centers could just collect the benefits. And it really touched my heart. It was such an awful, awful thing. So I think it's so I'm using a fictionalized version of that in the book that I'm working on now. And I'm enjoying it, but it's a little harder emotionally because it's such a dark story.
Yeah, and it's so recent and so real.
Yeah, right. And often it's the beauty of the landscape that kind of sustains me if I reach those flat spots where I'm not sure where the story's going. But the drive from Shiprock to Phoenix, a lot of that landscape is not particularly beautiful. So one thing I'm going to do when I head back to Arizona is make that drive again with more of an open heart and see what I can find that's beautiful there. But then I'm thinking it's kind of a metaphor for the transition that these people went through, where they go from their beautiful homeland where they are nurtured and sustained into urban America where they're just being exploited.
Yeah, that's going to be something to look forward to as well. When I take that drive, I've only done it a couple of times, but I just look at the sky. I lived in Lubbock for a number of years, and that's one of the things you learned is you look up.
Yeah.
And that really, because the clouds are always something.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me. One time when my dad was still alive, there was a reunion of people who'd worked at the New Mexican. And at that point, he wasn't driving anymore. So I was driving him, and we're driving on the interstate. And he says to me, pull off over here. I'm thinking, oh, okay. I don't ask why. I just pull off. And he gets out of the car, and he's looking towards the Jemez, looking at the sky. And he says, let's just stand here a minute and watch these clouds move. And it was such a sweet, sweet moment. I thought, yeah, this is why my dad is who he is who he is, and was who he was, because he really has that appreciation.
Wow, and he obviously passed it down to his family and to his children, especially to Anne Hillerman, who we are so glad could spend some time with us today. This has been another edition of Conversations Different.